Hello and welcome back to part 2 of The Walking Dead Rewrite Season 11, and where we left it off in part 1, the Reapers have found the map and they are on their way to the military base, and over at the Commonwealth everyone has been arrested apart from Yumiko. And if you want the story so far, make sure to go watch the previous videos to properly understand everything that has happened. But without making you wait any longer, let's jump right into this with part 2 and episode 4. Episode 4 begins with a building swarmed by walkers. The door then bursts open and Eugene, Max and Ezekiel storm in and start to clear the building. However, Ezekiel soon becomes a liability and struggles to breathe, collapsing. Max grabs Ezekiel and takes him outside, while Eugene finishes off the walkers. Outside, Max is checking on Ezekiel and suggests they should take him to see a doctor. But Ezekiel is against this suggestion, saying that he does not want to have to work off more debt. Max then looks up to see Mercer glancing at her disapprovingly as he walks by. Cut to Daryl and Andrea stumbling through the woods, and suddenly they hear a twig snap. They turn around quickly and are relieved to see Alden. Andrea hugs Alden, relieved to see him, and Alden then leads them back to the house. Inside the house, Andrea is quickly put on the sofa, and Alden then tends to her leg, while Maggie takes Daryl to her side and tells him that the base is only 3 miles out. Daryl is shocked and suggests that they go back after all the losses, but Maggie insists on completing the mission, unfazed on what they have lost. Daryl then comments saying, "So this is who you are now, a heartless raider," and Maggie then punches Daryl, telling him that he does not know what it takes to survive now. Maggie tells Daryl that all those years in the sanctuary have softened him, and then puts it in a harsh perspective for him, telling Daryl that if they go back now, everyone will die, including Judith and Connie. After being berated, Daryl is reluctantly forced to agree with Maggie that they must continue and finish the mission. And cut back to the Commonwealth, and Yumiko is in the town hall with Tommy, complaining about what happened and about the Commonwealth. She pushes Tommy again about hiding that he is a doctor, but Tommy tells Yumiko to stop and he is happy now. He then changes the subject back to Yumiko and asks what is she going to do. She tells him that she has booked an appointment with Pamela Milton and asks Tommy for some advice, but then troopers come over and grab Tommy and take him away and inform Yumiko that her meeting has been cancelled. Cut over to the Reapers and they are preparing for the raid. Gabriel kneels down in one of the pews but does not pray, and Gabriel just stares up at the altar. Carver then walks over and tells Gabriel to meet Pope around back. Outside, Gabriel meets Pope, and Pope tells him to get ready, he is coming. Gabriel, confused, asks why, and Pope tells Gabriel he is coming because he knows Gabriel killed the prisoner and he can't be trusted here. Pope then mentions God must be testing him. Pope then looks back over at Gabriel and says, "Forgive me, God," and then grabs Gabriel and drags him by the arm to the carriage and then throws him in the back. Gabriel tries to get up, but Carver grabs him and says, "Sorry, Father, you have to stay." And cut back to Daryl, Andrea, Alden, Elijah and Maggie, and some time has passed, but Maggie insists on going now. However, Daryl is against the idea and points out Andrea's leg. Maggie does not seem fazed though, and even tries to pick up Andrea, but she is punched to the floor. Alden then suddenly starts to become defensive and an argument breaks out. Daryl then shouts at the pair, shocked at what they have become, and then he reveals that he knows what they did with the Reaper camp, and that they started this skirmish with the Reapers. The room then suddenly goes silent, and Daryl continues to say that he thought she was better, and not some sort of thug like the Saviors were. Alden tries to defend their actions, saying that they had to do it as Herschel was starving and that people were relying on them. Alden even tries to justify it, saying that they didn't kill anyone, so what's the harm? However, Maggie remains silent and just falls to the floor exhausted. Andrew then looks over at Maggie and thinks to herself, has Maggie only just realised what she has become, the very thing she hates most? She almost is like Negan in some aspects now. However, later in the night, Elijah returns from a patrol and tells everyone that he spotted 2 Reapers scouts nearby. Everyone then rushes to get ready and get out. Daryl then picks up Andrea, but not before telling her sorry, and then everyone quietly leaves through the back door. Back at the Commonwealth, and Yumiko storms into Lance's office, demanding where her brother is, but Lance was waiting for her. Lance then asks if she has reconsidered. Yumiko quickly replies no. Lance then stops the pleasantries and tells her that that he lied and he will have to face the punishments. He then mentions that her friends have a really big debt to pay off, and Ezekiel is really sick and is in desperate need of a medical attention, but aid is not given to criminals. Lance then also mentions the group and asks Yumiko how much longer is she willing to wait, or is she going to wait for them to all die. He will only help them if she reconsiders. Yumiko then remains silent as Lance continues to tell her that he is disappointed she went to Miss Milton instead of him. He then reveals that he had to cancel her appointment. Lance then gets up and walks over to Yumiko and says, "So what is it going to be?" He then smiles and puts his hand out. "Did you reconsider?" And then cut back to Daryl, Andrea, Maggie, Alden and Elijah, and they get to the military base and are relieved to see that there are no Reapers. Inside of the compound, it almost seems empty, just a walker here and there, but not much of a fight. They then open the door to see a room filled with the dead, laying all over the floor, not knowing which ones are actually dead or not. Daryl, Maggie and Elijah sneak past the dead, while Alden and Andrea stay outside to try and find a way to get all this food back. Inside, the group manages to get to the other side of the hangar and break open the door without alerting any of the lurkers. And inside the room, the group find shelves and boxes all stacked with MREs. Everyone is then filled with joy, and even Maggie smiles, feeling hope for the first time in months. However, the moment is short-lived, as the group suddenly start to hear shouting and an explosion. Daryl then runs back to the door to see all the lurkers are now up, and even some are starting to swarm towards them. End of episode 4. Episode 5 begins with Gabriel in the carriage, and Pope looks back and orders everyone to put their masks on as they are nearly there. He then hands the reins over and hops into the back to talk to Gabriel. Pope apologizes to Gabriel for what he's about to do and what he will do again at Alexandria. He then tells Gabriel that God is testing you like he tests me. Pope then goes on about God's plan, but Gabriel has had enough and challenges Pope, questioning if does he really speak with God, or is he just another crazy madman broken by the end of the world. Pope responds by simply smiling and tells Gabriel maybe, maybe not, and that he will enjoy having many more conversations like this in the future. He then puts his mask on and goes back to the front. Cut forward to Andrea and Alden looking in horror as the Reapers arrive at the military base. Andrea then thinks fast and grabs as many guns off the floor as possible. She then orders Alden to do the same. The two then climb up onto a watchtower and prepare to open fire, but Pope then reveals a watcher and fireworks start to fly towards the military base, causing absolute chaos and alerting all of the dead. Before they can react, the dead are all over the compound. Alden then panics and starts to leave the watchtower. Andrea tries to stop him, but Alden begs her to let him go, telling her that he needs to find Maggie, and then climbs down as Andrea turns her attention back to the Reapers and starts to snipe the Reapers and the dead. I'm back with Daryl, Elijah and Maggie in the group fighting off as many walkers as they can while trying to fill up the bags. However, the walkers start to get too much and the group are forced to climb up the shelves with only 3 bags of food. But Daryl is then suddenly grabbed and pulled down into the horde and lands on a walker. Thinking fast, Daryl rolls over and uses the walker on top of him as camouflage. The shelves then start to shake and Maggie and Elijah hold on for dear life. Maggie then looks up and sees a gaping hole in the roof and orders Elijah to climb. The two manage to climb out just as the shelves start to collapse. And cut back to Gabriel, and most of the Reapers have gone into the base, leaving just Mansa and a Reaper operating the Watcher. Mansa then starts to pray, asking God for his protection, and this angers Gabriel. And Gabriel asks Mansa to stop and says God does not talk to them, but Mansa tells Gabriel yes he does, and he told us about you, a father from the south, a man that used to be a coward but is now a ruthless leader. A man ruthless enough to do anything, even breaking up families. Gabriel then lashes out and tackles the man to the floor and goes for the knife. The second Reaper tries to stop Gabriel, but it is too late as Gabriel then stabs him in the neck while telling him that he is lying and God cannot talk to him. Gabriel then turns and fights the second Reaper, and during the scuffle, the two knock over the Watcher, and instead of hitting the targets, it hits the ground, blowing itself up, the carriage, as well as Gabriel and the Reaper. Cut over to Pope, Carver, and 6 other Reapers as they try and fight their way through the walkers in the base. However, they are blocked at every turn and eventually find a ladder and manage to get on the roof above the walkers. The Reapers then bump into Maggie and Elijah, and they quickly surround the pair. Pope then gloats about it, saying to Maggie that it is fate. Pope then orders his Reapers to kill the pair, but Carver steps forwards and asks for Elijah to be his kill. And Pope then nods, allowing Carver to take this fight as Elijah charges Carver, shouting for his sister. The fight then starts, but it is quick as Elijah is then knocked down and is then stabbed in the arm. Carver then tries to go in for the final kill, but then a shot is fired and Carver has his ear blown off. 2 of the 6 Reapers then suddenly fall, and Elijah then is grabbed by Maggie and runs while Andrea covers them from afar. The Reapers are then forced to go inside, and Pope orders a Reaper to go and kill the sniper, but Andrea makes quick work of the Reaper, make sure he does not go far, killing him right in front of Pope. And cut back to Alden as he enters the hangar, trying to get to the storage room to save Maggie, using a whisper mask he kept from the war. However, the room is so dense he can barely move. He is then grabbed and turns around and sees Daryl covered in Walker blood. Daryl hushes him and tells him that she escaped through the roof, and the two then sneak out of the hangar into the adjacent building as it's the only way down from the roof. However, they unknowingly enter the building that Pope and the Reapers are inside. Inside, the pair make quick progress through the building as most of the dead are outside, but then Daryl is then suddenly knocked off his feet and looks up to see Pope, Carver, and 3 other Reapers. Alden tries to fight them off, but is then suddenly stabbed by Pope. Daryl then throws on his knives, killing one of the Reapers, and then tackles Pope to the floor. However, Pope quickly overpowers Daryl and beats him down. Alden then grabs a fire extinguisher and knocks one Reaper out, and then throws it at Carver, knocking him down. Alden then charges Pope, knocks him over, and then goes for the emergency exit. He opens the exit and lets a bunch of walkers swarm in. Pope goes for his gun, but Daryl shoots him with his crossbow through the hand, pinning him to the wall. As walkers swarm in, Daryl then grabs Alden, and the pair sneak out, while the walkers swarm the Reapers. Gabriel then wakes up, surrounded by flames and pieces of Reapers. He then looks down to see that he is somehow completely unscathed, and thinks to himself that it is a miracle that he is alive. Gabriel then looks around to see the absolute chaos that has unfolded at the army base and sees Andrea in the distance sniping on the watchtower. He then wanders towards the base still dazed and sees Daryl and Alden, and soon after Maggie and Elijah. Everyone then quickly tries to help Alden to stop the bleeding. Maggie panics, holding Alden's hand, and almost in tears keeps repeating that she can't lose him over and over again. While the blood continues to rush out, Gabriel runs over to what is left of the convoy to see if anything can help. However, there is nothing in the first 2 carriages. Gabriel then rushes to the 3rd and final carriage and finds a first aid kit. He then opens it to see it is completely full. He quietly says "Thank you, Lord" to himself before rushing back and stabilizing Alden. Soon the blood slows and eventually stops, and everyone breathes a sigh of relief. However, the moment is brief as a gunshot is then suddenly heard. Gabriel is in complete shock as his ears ring. He then looks down to see he is completely fine. Gabriel, confused, looks up and sees that Elijah has been shot in the chest next to him. Daryl then grabs Elijah while he falls, and everyone turns around to see Carver somehow still alive and covered in bites. Maggie then screams and grabs Daryl's crossbow, shooting Carver in the chest. She then runs at him with a knife, knocks him down, and starts to stab Carver over and over again until Andrea pulls her off him and cries into Andrea's arms as Andrea looks around to see Elijah now dead and Alden barely clinging on to life. Later, as the group get one of the carriages ready, Gabriel looks at how little they got from the base and suggests they go to the Reaper camp to get more food. Everyone seems hesitant, even Maggie, who just wants to go home, but Gabriel persuades everyone by saying it is now empty and we can make their deaths matter. Andrea, feeling guilty that she left him behind, agrees, and soon everyone agrees to go. They then pack up and head for the Reaper camp. End of episode 5. And episode 6 begins with Carl and Negan walking south along the roads, and it is clear they've not had the best luck recently, as Negan now has a sprained ankle and Carl has to help him limp. They get to a fallen tree and Carl takes a chance to allow Negan to rest. Once they both sat down, Negan looks for his bag for any rations, and he has nothing, and Carl gives the last of his rations to Negan. The two then sit quietly and watch a lone walker slowly follow them. A twig then snaps and an axe is then suddenly put to Negan's neck. And as Carl turns around, he sees a little girl holding a shovel. He is then smacked in the face and knocked out. Cut over to Yumiko with Mercer walking through the walker-infested ruins outside of the Commonwealth. She looks around to see many people going building to building, killing walkers and bringing them outside. Mercer then points and tells Yumiko to follow, and they soon find Ezekiel collapsed on the floor, unable to breathe, while two soldiers surround him, trying to get him up. Mercer then storms over and reprimands the two soldiers and orders them to take him to the hospital. Mercer then tells Yumiko to wait and shouts into the building saying that he is coming in. Yumiko then watches as he takes down two walkers with his bare hands, and soon he returns with an exhausted Eugene and Max. Mercer then orders a soldier over to take them away to be cleaned up. Eugene looks over at Yumiko confused, and Yumiko tells him to go with Mercer and to help our people. Eugene asks, "What did you do?" and Yumiko quickly replies, "I'm sorry, I have to go." And over with Maggie, Alden, Gabriel, Daryl and Andrea, and they finally make it to the Reaper camp at the old church with the walled courtyard. However, it is not completely deserted. Daryl looks over to Gabriel and asks, "I thought you said it was deserted." Gabriel replies, "Apparently not," and after waiting for a while, the group notice there is only 4 Reapers max, potentially in the base, and the group then decide to sneak in as Andrew and Alden stay behind as they are injured. They then use a walker to distract one of the Reapers and then quickly climb the wall. Once inside, Daryl uses his crossbow to take out 2 Reapers, while Maggie gets the 3rd with a knife. However, Gabriel is caught by the final Reaper, but the Reaper does not attack, and even removes his mask and lets his guard down, asking, "Is Pope back?" Gabriel says yes and then walks towards the Reaper, and as soon as he's close enough, he stabs the Reaper in the side until he is dead. The gates then open and Andrea brings the carriage in. Daryl then meets the carriage outside and helps Andrea down. Andrea then looks over to Daryl, visibly conflicted, and asks Daryl, "Are you okay with this?" and continues saying that she's questioning, are they as bad as the Reapers, as they are now raiding their home. She even mentions the Reapers are only retaliating because of what Maggie did. Daryl quickly snaps back, saying that you were okay with the Saviour outpost all those years ago, and Andrew replies this is different, questioning, are the Reapers really the victims? Daryl tries to confront her, telling her that we have to do this or else everyone will die at home, including Judith. Inside, Gabriel shows Maggie the food storage and it is full. They both grab as much as possible and start to fill up the carriage. And back with Carl as he comes to, and he looks around and hears music playing at double speed. He sees a child and she shouts that, "Dad, he's awake." Carl then turns around to see Morgan walking towards him. Morgan then helps Carl up and apologizing to Carl, explaining that he did not know it was you. Carl then asks where is Negan, and Morgan asks his daughter to go and untie him from the tree. Morgan then picks up Carl's hat and hands it back to him while telling Carl about how shocked he is about how big he has grown now. The little girl then returns with Negan and Morgan introduces Carl to his daughter Mo. Carl then jokes that she is quite a hit and Mo tells Carl that she has a good teacher. Morgan then turns off the music and turns his attention to Negan, asking Carl why does he travel with him. Carl then reveals that him and Negan have been exiled from Alexandria, and Morgan asks why Rick would exile his own son. Carl pauses for a moment and tells Morgan that he did not. Rick is dead and he died a year ago, saving everyone from a horde. Morgan is then taken back by the news and apologizes to Carl before taking a seat. Carl then asks what Morgan is doing in the area, and Morgan reveals that he was going back to Alexandria. He then asks Carl where is he going to go. Carl reveals that him and Negan are just wandering around, but Negan now has an injured leg, so they're looking for some medical equipment and then going on their way. Morgan then reveals that he met a community a couple miles back in a tower block and says that they could help them. However, Carl is against the idea, feeling that he doesn't want to intrude upon a new community, but Negan insists that they have to go and he cannot keep walking much longer. Morgan says, well, it's decided then, and then tells Mo to start packing. And cut back to the Reaper camp, and the carriage is nearly full and everyone is getting ready to leave. Gabriel then walks over to Andrea and apologises for exiling Carl. He tells Andrea what he did was wrong and he should never have made the decision alone. Gabriel recognises an apology alone will not be enough and promises Andrea that he will try to make it up to her and will find Carl as soon as he gets back to Alexandria. Andrea appreciates the apology but does not find it in her to be able to forgive Gabriel. Maggie then calls for everyone to get on the carriage as they are now ready to leave. Daryl then opens the gate and everyone rides out. Maggie looks back at the church, reflecting on everything that has happened and everyone that they have lost. However, she does not feel guilty that she inadvertently caused everything. Maggie then smiles as she looks down to see Alden's hand in hers. Alden asks what is she smiling about, and Maggie replies nothing and then rests her head on his shoulder. And back with Morgan, Carl, Mo and Negan, and they finally get to the tower block. Morgan then knocks on the door and the slit opens up, revealing a pair of brown eyes. The door then quickly opens up and a young woman greets Morgan and Mo with open arms. Morgan then hugs the woman and introduces Annie to Carl and Negan. Annie then hugs Carl and says, I've heard so much about you and your father. She then lets them in and introduces Carl and Negan to the leader, Ian. Ian greets Morgan as Annie takes Mo off to play with the other children. Ian asks, what can we do for you? And Morgan explains that Carl and Negan are in need for a place to live for a while as Negan has an injured leg. Ian is a bit hesitant about letting new people in though, but Morgan then vouches for them and Ian agrees to let them stay for a little while, but they must give up their weapons. Carl and Negan then look at each other and Negan then puts his crowbar on the table, but Carl then looks down at his dad's gun, unable to part with it. Ian tries to grab the gun, but Carl pulls away. Tension then rises, but Morgan quickly takes hold of the situation and explains to Ian that that was his dad's gun. And Morgan then suggests that Ian takes all the ammo and Carl gets to keep the empty gun. Carl reluctantly agrees to these terms and hands the ammo over. Later, as everyone is having dinner, Morgan sits next to Carl and tells him to give this place a chance and that there's nothing out there for him and Negan. Mo and Annie then come over and Morgan asks Mo what she has been doing today. Annie then sits next to Carl and asks him about what his life was like on the road. She then asks him about Rick and Carl becomes quiet. Annie looks over at Carl and instantly realizes that Rick is now gone, and then stands up and takes Carl's hand and tells him to follow her. Annie then takes Carl into another room and shows him a wall. She tells Carl, this is our memorial wall. We come here to remember the ones we lost before and after the fall. Annie then points at a photo of her parents and mentions that she lost them years ago and she will not be here without Ian, who saved her and looked after her since she was a child. Annie then turns to Carl, telling him that she is sorry about Rick and everything that he has lost. She then asks Carl if he would like to put anything on the wall so that they will never be forgotten. Carl pauses for a moment and then reaches into his pocket, pulling out an old photo of Rick and Laurie, as well as an old Polaroid of himself and Enid. Carl then puts both of the photos on the wall, and the scene ends with Annie asking what were they like. And then the next morning, as Carl is having breakfast, Morgan sits down next to Carl and asks how is Negan, and Carl reveals that Negan needs a few weeks rest and that he has badly sprained his ankle. And then Morgan asks Carl what does he think about this place, and as he looks around he sees Annie once again and tells Morgan that he likes it here. And then Carl asks Morgan when is he going to Alexandria, and Morgan reveals that he is staying for a little while longer. When Carl asks why, Morgan gives a cryptic response saying he wants to be surrounded by some good people and he wants Mo to be safe. And then cut back to Alexandria as Daryl, Andrea, Maggie Alden and Gabriel finally return. Aaron watches on as the group come in and wonders where everyone else is. And once inside, Herschel and Judith reunite with their mothers while Alden is helped to the infirmary. Connie then runs over and signs to Daryl that she missed him and she is happy to see him again, and Daryl signs if she wants an apple, and then starts to hand out food to everyone. Aaron then asks Gabriel what happened, and Gabriel tells Aaron so many died so that we could survive. It was a massacre out there. Aaron tries to reassure Gabriel and says that we will. A guard then suddenly shouts, "We got something coming," and everyone springs into action. Maggie and Daryl run to the gate while Gabriel tries to get everyone inside. Daryl looks on to see a convoy of trucks coming towards them with armoured troopers in white uniforms. They get ready to defend the gate, and then Eugene runs out from the back and shouts over and over again for everyone to wait and to calm down. He then tells Daryl that they are here to help. Once inside and everyone's together, Eugene introduces Lance Hornsby, and Lance tells everyone about how impressed he is at their resilience, and he is here to help them rebuild their communities if they join the Commonwealth, and if they want, they could even live in the Commonwealth. As the speech continues, Lance talks about how the Commonwealth will look after them and protect them from any harm, and then cut forward 6 months to the point of view of someone being held at gunpoint by a trooper on a roof. The trooper then says, "I really thought you were smarter than this," and then pulls the trigger. End of episode and end of part 2. And this is where we'll leave it today. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you in part 3. Goodbye, and I'll talk to you later.